Hey guys, happy Thursday. Welcome back to another video. By the way, that is one of my business partners. Say hello, please. Thank you. So anyway, it's the end of the week, which means it's time to start looking at how the freight market has changed week over week. We're also going to take a look at where the relatively better places are for flatbeds, reefers, and dry vans. Now, I do understand that it has been challenging for most of us this month. We do have to remember that it is February. In either case, let's take a peek at the market to see what has actually changed and in what direction. Ready? Let's go. All right, as always, we're going to start with capacity. And as of last Friday, week over week, we lost an additional 426 carriers net. Again, this is very telling of the times. For a prolonged period of time already, almost a year, we're seeing a net negative change for carriers, right? More carriers are leaving than are coming in. But at the same time, what we will realize, and what we have already realized, that the amount of carriers leaving the market is not enough to tip the pendulum towards the benefit of the carrier. Now, in terms of general freight volume, we can see that volumes are still above the 2023 levels, but we also see that for the past few weeks, they have been going down. Although over the past few days, volumes did make a U-turn for the better. Again, February is one of the crappiest months in the trucking industry. Some of you will disagree with me. I see that some of you are doing better right now, which is fantastic. But for most carriers, it's pretty crappy. And we assume that the volumes will start picking up again in the coming months. Now, if we take a look at rejection rates, unfortunately, those fell by 0.29% since last week and are continuing to plummet down. Currently, rejections are at 4.52%. It's still higher than this time in 2023, but unfortunately, that trend is just a little concerning. Now, let's take a look at diesel prices, and we can see that diesel has stabilized over the past week or so. We are at $4.11 per gallon nationwide. It hasn't changed at all since last week. And I always say that as long as things don't get worse, we're already winning, although the diesel prices currently are definitely unacceptable. Anyway, let's chat about more specific data now. Let's start by looking at everything related to dry vans, starting with the spot volume. So we can see that spot volumes are slightly lower than they were last week, and it did affect rates as well. Rates are down by about 2 cents per mile week over week, and the current average is $1.93 per mile, which is absolutely crazy. But this is what happens when there is a lack of volume, which is normal for February, and overcapacity of dry vans, right? The rates become unsustainable. But the bigger question is, where do you need to go in order to be in a relatively better position next week? Now, just a reminder, when I talk about the relatively better markets, I'm not saying that these markets are outstanding. What I'm saying is there you are going to get a relatively better opportunity to grab better loads than in the rest of the market. It's all compared to other places, right? So number one, we have Twin Falls, Idaho. Just like last week, rejection of 36% for freight going out of Twin Falls, Idaho. The volume index is 67, more loads than trucks, and the inbound rejection is 28.5%. Now, even though this is the relatively better market right now, it is significantly worse than it was last week. The second market is Green Bay, Wisconsin, 14% rejection for outbound freight, 64 is the index of the volume, more loads than trucks, and 16.5% rejection for loads going to Green Bay, Wisconsin. And just like with Idaho, it did take a hit from last week. Now, even though these are the only two markets that kind of hit all the boxes, all the checkpoints, high outbound rejection, high volume, high load to truck ratios, and of course, high inbound rejection. If we take a step back from these maps, of course, we'll see that the Midwest is relatively better. There are more opportunities, less deadhead also for dry vans. So I would recommend sticking there. Now let's talk about reefers, starting with the spot market volumes. So just like with dry vans, unfortunately, reefers saw a decrease in spot market volume and rates followed. Currently, spot rates are $2.23 per mile, which is a 3-cent decrease week over week. But again, the question is, where do you need to go next week to be in a better position than your competition, basically? Well, there's only one place, which is, again, Twin Falls, Idaho. 22% rejection for outbound loads. 27 is the volume index, more loads than trucks, and 18% rejection for inbound loads. So overall, this market didn't change in a big way from last week. But again, if we step away from the map for a moment and just look at rejections, what we'll see is that in general, reefers might have some opportunities in states like Illinois, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Missouri, just like dry vans. Finally, we have flatbeds, last but not least. So let's take a look at what happened to volumes on the spot market. So volumes actually increased for flatbeds on the spot market week over week, and they also took the rates with them, right? There was a 4-cent increase in the rate per mile to $2.39 per mile. The only question now is, where was the improvement actually? So let's take a look at 3 maps from Truckstop that I make from Truckstop data. We're going to look at loads, capacity, and then the load to truck ratio. So if we take a look at the loads, the load volumes, we can see that unfortunately the Pacific Northwest pretty much died. There is very limited volume there. And something you will quickly realize is that in states like Oregon and Washington, there might seem like there are a lot of loads, but it's actually 1 or 2 shippers giving this load to 100 different brokers who repost that load 100 different times, and at the end of the day, the shipper covers the load, him or herself. Now, looking at the capacity map, it is very clear that people are, or trucks are migrating towards the Midwest and even the East Coast and the South away from the West right now. But the most important question, of course, is load to truck ratios. Where is the overcapacity? Where are there more loads than trucks? So as a reminder, red is less than a load per truck. Orange is 1 load per truck, yellow is 2 loads per truck, and green is over 3 loads per truck. Some good news, some bad news. California actually got slightly better week over week. We can see that last week we had overcapacity, less than a load per truck. Now it's around a load per truck, which is an improvement. The Pacific Northwest died due to the lack of volume, of course, but just like last week, Maryland, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana are still the areas where there are over 3 loads per truck, which means that you have the negotiating power. Now, last week, I talked about general capacity. I took all the loads, all the trucks, just to get an average of what the load to truck ratio is nationwide. It hasn't changed for flatbeds. It's still at 0.99, still over capacity, unfortunately. So that's what it is for this week. For the most part, there wasn't really any change. It's either stable bad or maybe slightly worse than last week. Again, in this kind of market, patience is a virtue. I do understand that it is challenging, but we will get through it one way or another. Anyway, guys, wishing you all a fantastic weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, and keep learning. See you in the next video.